Uh, Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoy this evening. So just to explain a little bit about who I am and where the whole business name came from. So my name is Aoife Gaffney. I'm the only certified money coach in Ireland. I'm a money mindset mentor, best-selling author and speaker. And Prudence Moneypenny came about as a sort of a joke. I met a bank manager, gosh, maybe 20, 25 years ago when I started on this idea that being self-employed might be something I might like to do. Just took me a while to get around to it. And he said, whatever you do in your business, always make sure to be prudent, to exercise prudence. What does he mean? And what he really meant was to be kind of sensible rather than being reckless, that if you do need to present to the bank, getting these words into the conversation are quite good, so that this is my business plan, I'm going to exercise a very prudent approach to things. So it's a word that bank managers like to hear. And then, when I was trying to come up with a name for the business, I thought, well, Prudence, I kind of like Prudence, because I suppose it is maybe how it's my attitude to money, that it's, I'm careful, respectful, not frugal, because that's different. But to me, prudent is being quite wise, being strategic. And then I thought, okay, well, she needs a last name. So I think my son was over there. He's the head of creative for Prudence Money Coaching. He's hiding over there in the corner. I think we were probably watching a Bond film or something at the time. So anyway, that's hence the name Prudence Moneypenny. So I had that cartoon is actually based on an image of me when I had more hair. So I hid behind Prudence Moneypenny for ages because I didn't have confidence in myself. I didn't have confidence in my own ability to deliver this message, which is actually ridiculous because we are all expert at what we do. Just sometimes you need somebody else to tell you that actually you are pretty good at what you're doing. So anyway, that's how Prudence Moneypenny came about. So it kind of stuck. But anyway, I've come out now from behind the cartoon, and so there is a picture of me. So just a little bit about me and as to what gives me, in a sense, the authority to speak to you. Women particularly, sometimes we feel, oh gosh, I need another piece of paper. Not quite ready to deliver my message now. I probably need to go out and do, and I need to do another PhD. I probably need one more Nobel Prize now before I can sort of be the expert. So I went out and I did an awful a big pile of things. So I am the only certified money coach in Ireland. I trained with the Money Coaching Institute with an amazing lady, Deborah Price. I have a master's degree from Trinity. That was 2 years of my life. I won't get back. 2 years of my life that my poor family spent looking at the back of my head. I have a life coaching accreditation, and I have a big pile of other qualifications because, I might just need one more piece of paper. And that would probably be my put on my headstone. She didn't have time to get one more piece of paper. I'm also an author. So these are 3 books. These books are available on Kindle. So the Essential Student Survival Guide was commissioned by a company called Doctoral Net. So I was working for them for a little bit on student retention and completion. And it's kind of, I suppose it's kind of silly the way it's written, but it's about how you manage your studies when you're trying to manage your family as well. And then I'm also a 2-time international best-selling author, co-authored the We Summit Together book, Activate Your Life and Financial Freedom Explained, and I have copies of those available here to purchase and sign. And when I'm not writing, what am I doing when I'm not writing? One of the things on my bucket list, everybody has this bucket list, and for no reason, I decided that I wanted to learn to drive an ambulance. That is currently what I'm in the process of doing. I would not ask me to drive you if there was an emergency because I drive very slowly. But anyway, it was something I've always wanted to do. So that is currently what I'm up to. And I get to drive the ambulance. So you get to drive in bus lanes and it's access all areas. I volunteer as an emergency first responder with John Ambulance when I'm not busy writing books and doing all sorts of things. So this is my family. So this is where my story began. Everybody has a story, and this is my family. So this photograph was taken in 1973. That's me at the front with the bear and the trousers that don't fit. So I have another sister. So this is the family. This is how I grew up. And there's my parents in the background. That actually is a selfie. It was when we had to use a timer. So you set the timer, you need to run around to the front of the camera. But this is the environment that I grew up in. I grew up in an environment of scarcity. Now, this is not being disrespectful to my parents, not in any shape or form, but everything was quite scarce. time was scarce. Even physical space at the table was scarce. So dinner was in shifts. I think there were 3 shifts, so, and it was on age. The older you were, the later you ate. Even clothes, they probably were not my trousers. Clothes were scarce. And so every sentence tended to be prefixed with my mom, very traditional household. My mom had to give up her job when she got married, 1950s. Every sentence was prefixed with, thanks to your father's hard work, we can or cannot do something. So I then associated money with coming from a man, so that I didn't have permission to earn money, because sometimes we model the behaviors, even though it's not what we're being told. We tend to model these behaviors. And then I also associated money with having to work hard. So you're not allowed to enjoy the work, and you had to work incredibly hard. My dad worked incredibly hard. And he probably worked hard actually just to get away from this sort of chaos. But I had this idea in my head that I didn't have permission to earn my own money, that money had to come from another source. It had to come from a man. And in order for me to have money, I probably needed to have a husband. So I did. I got a husband, but I gave him back because it didn't really work. That didn't work. So this is my other family. That is my lovely son there on the left. He is head of creative. And this is my son and my husband, my now husband. And this is how money coaching works. People often ask me, so how does it work? Do you come to my house? What do you do? So I work in a variety of ways. I run workshops. I run workshops like this. I run a signature 6-week program as well. I do one-to-one coaching. But money management is easy. Spend less, earn more, the end. It is a simple thing to do. And the reason it gets muddled and people this whole money thing just seems to have power over them is because they're stuck here on the mindset bit. So my mindset was a mindset of scarcity. My mindset was that as a woman, and I was 10 women in one house and one man earning the money, even though that's not the message that my parents were telling me, it was the message that I was getting unconsciously. And my mom had a real chip on her shoulder that she was not allowed to work. And in fact, she was actually probably more entrepreneurial. So I got married. I had a husband. I got myself one of those husbands because that's what I thought would make me happy. And that's what I thought would be my route to financial freedom. Anyway, that relationship broke down and I ended up quite substantially in debt. But then I went and I made the same mistake again. So when I talk about money management, I'm coming at it from a place of true experience of having been left quite financially vulnerable twice. I thought, well, I am an intelligent woman. I have a brain. I've been to college. What am I doing wrong? And it wasn't so much that I was doing wrong, it was what I wasn't doing right. So my mindset, and when I began to do this work on myself, I spent a long time working in debt negotiation. It was this sudden realization that there was actually nothing wrong with me at all. It was always everybody else's problem. No, there was nothing wrong with me. It was my mindset. So my mindset was that in order for me to be financially free, I needed to have a man in my life. And because he was a man, men then were clearly better at managing money than I was. So because I was a woman, what on earth would I know about this whole money business? And it was when that light bulb went off in my head, I thought, okay, so that's why I had this pattern of attracting the wrong people into my life. There was nothing wrong with me. It was what I was telling myself. And the minute I made that mental shift, that minute might have taken a couple of years, so it was quite a long minute. When I made that mental shift and I began to work on myself and I began to work on my mindset, quite incredible things began to happen. Opportunities began to open up for me. And those opportunities were always there. I just never noticed. And I manifested a wonderful man, my now husband, into my life. And it's been a huge learning curve actually for both of us to be able to have those money conversations and have those money conversations as comfortably as past the salt. we are at a stage now where we can do that. So this is how money coaching works. It works in a variety of different ways, and you can work with me on a variety of different ways. So when you're in your comfort zone, things are easy. You don't want to get out of it. Your comfort zone is what you know. It's familiar, even though it might not be what you want. It's familiar, and sometimes, well, out there is, even though in your heart and soul you know that maybe something else is better, there is that unconscious fear of, gosh, if I let go of where I'm at, what if out there is worse? What if? And it is that what if. It is that always that fear of the unknown. So I don't believe in take massive action. I don't believe in making huge leaps of faith. I have taken some enormous leaps of faith, but sometimes it's so far out of our comfort zones that we will do everything in our power then to do the snap back, like the rubber band. So you do something ridiculous, and I have done ridiculous things like walk over hot coals and a few other ridiculous things, that it was so ridiculously far out of my comfort zone that the last thing I ever wanted to do was to go do that again. So I just wanted to go home, put my head under the pillow, and never leave the house again. So I much prefer, and I think it's far more sustainable, to take much smaller incremental steps. And that's the way I work. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just the way that I personally work. So there's a couple of quizzes that you can take on the website. They're free to take. It's prudencemoneypenny.com/money type. And your own money type is actually quite interesting. And this can change. It doesn't mean if I'm this, I'm never going to change. But knowing where you're at now in this current phase of your life, where your mindset is now in relation to money, is very, very interesting. It's very enlightening. And actually, with talking to somebody within about 2 to 3 minutes, I can usually predict what their score is going to be. So Deborah Price, the woman I trained with, came up with these archetypes as such. And for a long time, I was stuck here in the martyr and the victim archetype. I want to put that another blind down. I was stuck in that space. Yeah, it's quite a bright space. So, and the martyr very definitely came from my mum. I mean, my mum was an amazing woman, but oh my goodness, would she polishing her martyr badge every day? She'd be polishing that badge, and the martyr badge was always putting herself last because she didn't feel worthy. And when I delved a bit deeper, it came from her, the way she was brought up and how she was treated at school. But she would always put herself last, always. She would never, ever dream of putting herself first. And she did play the victim, not intentionally, but this is my burden. This is what I need to do, and poor me, and these things always happen to me. And she was very much a martyr, but that's what she was brought up to believe, that if you weren't a martyr, you weren't going to you weren't a good person. If you weren't really hard on yourself, you weren't a good person. And both my parents were quite generous benefactors, but they were brought up that if you're going to give, and I firmly believe in giving, but you had to give to the point that you had nothing. So you can't help the poor by being a poor. So, but they were brought up to give and give to the point of pain, which is just ridiculous, and it doesn't make any sense. So the money archetypes are very interesting. And I'm probably now at this stage in my life, I'm moving more kind of into warrior magician. So the fool is probably, I was in this stage for a while. You just head in the sand, head in the clouds. You just don't care. Everything is fine. You're going along, and you don't actually even. The fool and the innocent are quite similar. You don't even want to know what's going on. You just don't open the bills. You don't care. It'll be fine. It'll be perfectly fine. Everything will work out. But deep down, that you're probably sinking further and further into difficulties. But there's something preventing you from facing those problems. So if I say the word budget, what images or words does it conjure up for you? If you hear the word budget, or somebody says to you, I'm on a budget, or we need to make a budget, Okay, scarcity, yeah. What else does it kind of conjure up? Yeah?
Limitation.
It does, yeah. And for me, it's kind of, it's like almost like government policy. You know, the budget is coming up.
You see planning now in this season, but I've seen
There's two budgets. One from ourselves, family around, and then from government.
Yeah.
So you kind of hitting twice.
Yeah. So sometimes a budget is something that's kind of imposed upon you, almost like you. And we don't have a lot of choice with the government budget. You know, they put fuel up, or they put a tax on cigarettes or something. You don't have a whole, you could give up smoking, but don't have a whole heap of choice when some of those goalposts get moved. But what if we called, and budget for me makes my hair stand on end, just that particular word absolutely makes my hair stand on end. So I never use it. That if this word is causing me to break out in a cold sweat, then I just need to find another word. So when I'm working with clients, I say, okay, you know, we explore what words resonate more positively with them. And so when I'm doing the money stuff, my husband and I, and he thought it was kind of strange in the beginning, but now he understands it. And I call it the financial freedom. I think it's the wealth building plan, or the kind of personal wealth building strategy. And so it doesn't feel so, we're still making plans and we're still allocating, but it doesn't feel so restrictive. And it doesn't make doing the money stuff such an arduous task. So money coaching really is about making these very small shifts. And if particular words just make you break out in a cold sweat, and it's just from whatever your beliefs or how you've been brought up, or these strange associations that sometimes happen in our minds, it's really simple to change them. Very, very, very simple. So I have, my beliefs are simple and my methodologies are very simple, but I also believe that everybody needs a wife. And a wife is a woman in financial empowerment. And it's incredibly important for women particularly to take control of their own financial freedom, because just the way we are, that women, we take time off to do things. We take time off to have children. We take time sometimes out of our careers to do things. And sometimes then we can become overlooked for promotion, or we're less likely to put ourselves forward for something. And men, they just do, in general, I'm generalizing, men in general have more confidence. A man will look at a job application and maybe meet 2 or 3 out of the 10 points and go, yeah, fine, that job's mine. I'm grand, that's in the bag. And a woman will go, well, now I only meet probably about 9.5 out of those 10 things that they're looking for. So I probably need to go out and do another course. I really do. Yeah, I'm just not quite perfect enough. With men, just do it. With women, we do, in general, tend to hold ourselves back a little bit. But it is incredibly important for women to take control of their financial empowerment and their financial freedom, especially when it comes to money and money education. So what is a money block? Who has money blocks? Put your hand up. Even with all of the work that I do on myself, I still have blocks, and I always will. It's new level, new devil. So, you know, the methods don't change, but it's up leveling. You know, you increase your income, and then mysteriously the universe just knows that you just had a pay rise, and something bizarre will happen. That, yes.
That's happening for me all the time. We have before a small budget when I have a job, a permanent job. And then I give up my job, and there was a problem what we do with the budget. So we give up all the budget things, and the money blocks. We have all the time the same thing. So if the payment increase on your salary or anything like that, you get money from somebody, or you do with the money something. Always something happening to take away.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? So it almost becomes, the amount of money ceases to matter, and that's something that I really need you to let go of. It's not necessarily, it's not about the numbers, it's about the method. And people think, well, I'll be happy when I earn this much money, then I'll be happy. But then something sneaky comes along, and something bizarrely out of our control, like a change in budget or a change in policy, or sometimes we do something like change the car, and then the car payments, that's fantastic. Now we can afford this new car, and your car repayments go up to match the amount of money that's coming in, because we are uncomfortable having more. This is what I mean about the very small incremental changes. Get comfortable with a little bit more, and then you kind of find that level. Do another little change, get comfortable at that. So that's the new level, new devil. It is bizarre. The universe is quite interesting. So does this equation make sense? Sales minus expenses equals profit. It does. It makes logical sense. You earn the money, you spend the money, and then you keep the bit that's left, if there's a bit left. But in a lot of cases, sometimes this bit is bigger than this bit, and that's where things fall apart. Earn more, spend less, the end. Who is stuck in this cycle? So you get paid, like, hooray, hooray, payday. Or sometimes the end of the month, a lot of shops and retailers and online stores will often do promotions to maybe the last Friday of the month or something, because they know that the majority of people get paid towards the end of the month. So you go, hooray, fantastic, we can do loads of stuff. And so let's eat out, let's go mad, let's go here. And then you go, no, really, we need to do the budget. And then, no, not at all. There was a pair of shoes now that spoke to me, and they go, oh no, the dog ate the receipt. And then disaster, too much month. And then the cycle just perpetuates. And it perpetuates because money has power over you. You don't have power over your money. The minute you reclaim your power over money, this cycle stops. And it's not a cycle. It becomes a flat line. So it doesn't matter if your pay is delayed. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you're in control. This is where most people are stuck. Now, these are adapted from Robert Kiyosaki's philosophies, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I find him quite masculine, oddly, because he's a man. So I prefer a woman called Anne Wilson, the wealth chef, and that's who these images were taken from. So this is where most people are. This is the sort of the payday cycle. So you get paid, and then you use your money, your income, to buy a liability. So you use it to buy, maybe to change your car, or to go on holidays, or to buy a liability, something that's taking money out of your pocket. And then that then generates an expense. So you're never really looking at this bit. You're never really looking at building up an asset. So, your money comes in and your money goes whizzing back out again. And sometimes you end up with more out and less in. And if you have more out and not so much in, that's when you're in that debt cycle. And so we tend to forget about this bit. So there's nothing wrong with spending money, by the way. I firmly believe in spending money. In fact, I think spending money is great. It's how you spend it and what you spend it on, and the order that which you spend the money is hugely important. So let's take that equation again. So we have money in, less your expenses, and you have the bit that's left. The bit that's left is your profit. So whether that's you as an individual or you as a business, it doesn't matter if you're a massive big corporate like Google or you're an individual. It doesn't matter. It's a simple equation. You have your money in, you spend it, and then if there's a bit left, happy days. So what if we took that and turned it on its head? And I say, no, stamp that out. Turn it upside down and said, what if you took your profit first? And the resistance I get, but I have to pay, and but again, I'm not saying don't pay your bills. I'm not saying don't do any of those things. I'm just saying, just turn it upside down. Pay yourself first. So what you're doing is you are telling your brain that you are the most important person in the equation, and then you spend what's left. So by simply just changing the order in which you do things, you will always have enough, and it's a very simple mindset shift. It takes no effort. It doesn't cost anything. In fact, it's totally free. to do this, and it is simply changing the order in which you do things. It's prioritizing yourself. There are two ways to make money. You can work for money, or you can make your money work for you. But in a lot of cases, it just takes a transition. So you begin to work for money, and what's really important is that you take some of that money and put it into wealth building assets. And an asset is simply something that puts money into your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out. And that's it. That's really simple. So let's take that drawing again. So we have our money coming in, and instead of going straight to the liabilities, so the liabilities, the things that take money out of your pocket, so things like, oh, we've got a pay rise, we can go on a more expensive holiday. Now we can upgrade the television, we can take out a more expensive subscription we can watch Sky Sports now. What can we do? We can do lots of things. So taking some of that money first, putting it into a wealth building asset, so that then your income is coming from the asset, not from your physical labor. There are 24 hours in the day, and in general, we sleep for about 8 of those. So you're left with 16 of them. If you work 16 hours a day, day in, day out, you'd probably keel over. So time is the only finite resource that we have. Everybody has 24 hours, even Barack Obama. He probably has a team of people helping him. I suspect he might have a few people helping him out. But time is the only finite resource we can get. We could always get more money. We can never get more time. The simple equation of taking a portion of your income, getting into the habit, it's not about the money. It's not about the amounts. It's about the methods. So then using that money to build assets, that then your assets are generating your income, not you physically going out the door, washing your face, brushing your hair, shoulder to the wheel. So how do you do it? It's really simple. It's a very simple principle. So I'm telling you what to do, but the real key is in how. So how do you do it? Use smaller plates. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's just about, it's making tiny, tiny, tiny changes to your expenses. So looking at all of your expenses and saying, is there a way that I can still do this thing for slightly less? And with one phone call over the last week, a couple of phone calls, I managed to knock, between switching utilities and speaking with the mobile phone provider, a few bits and pieces like that, next to no effort. I had an overpayment refunded. I probably have saved myself probably about 30 to 40 euro a month, maybe more actually, if I really calculate it out, with next to no effort, no loss of service, no interruption to anything. In fact, nobody in the house even noticed that I had made those changes. So next to no effort. So use smaller plates, and it's knowing your numbers. It doesn't matter really what the numbers are, it's as long as you know them. Paying yourself first. So if you're an employee, you can ask your payroll department to make that deduction at source. So can you, before I get my money, can you please take this much and put it away into a vault, a lockbox on another planet, another universe? So, stick it into a pension or put it into something. If you're self-employed, you say, well, every time money comes into my bank account, it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, you make a decision to pay yourself a portion of that money. And I prefer to use percentages rather than fixed amounts, because especially if you're self-employed, your income can fluctuate. So if you say, gosh, I have this burden of this much money every month, and maybe one month is not so great, sometimes that burden becomes too much, and you go, stuff this, if I'm not doing this, is too much, I'll give up, it's too hard. But if you work on percentages, or just an amount, it doesn't really matter how big or how small that amount is. And sometimes you have a mixture of self-employed and employed income. So it's really important that you pay yourself first from all sources of income. The temptation, remove it. So what do I mean by temptation? I unsubscribed from tons of, the Groupon sites and all. I just unsubscribed. And now if there's something I want, I'll go and search for it. So let's say I want to go and do something. I'll say, I'll just see if there's an offer, and maybe spend 10 minutes looking. And generally there is. But I found that when I was on these sites, I go, oh, that's really nice. And it's only, it's down from 100 euro to 50. It was probably something I didn't really need or want anyway, but it was this idea of scarcity. There's only 5 left, last of the last of, scarcity breeds demand. So even removing myself and unsubscribing actually felt liberating. So it was less rubbish in my inbox, less temptation. I didn't feel any poor. I didn't feel any sense of being deprived or any sense of frugality. I actually felt liberated. I felt free. And I'm in a routine. So every morning I spend maybe 2 to 3 minutes doing a check-in with money. So I check my bank accounts, takes me maybe a minute, check my bank accounts, log in, check my bank accounts, and I've set them up so that when I log in, they have very positive, powerful prosperity messages. So I call my bank accounts, I give them, instead of account number 1, 2, or the names that the banks give them. Some banks allow you to give your bank accounts nicknames. So, the prosperity fund or the wealth building fund, or this is my freedom fund. So when I log in and I check them, again, it's sending these very unconscious reminders. Cost nothing, time spent about 22 seconds. And it's these very, very small incremental changes and these positive anchors that cost absolutely nothing and take next to no effort. So I have a routine of checking the bank accounts, checking in with my money, clearing the clutter, taking out receipts and things I don't need from my wallet, and I do that every day and filing them so it doesn't become the end of the month monster or the end of the year monster. Cancelling stuff. Is there a subscription you're not using? Is there something you're not using? I cancelled a few bits and pieces and nobody noticed. I can't even remember what they were. Yeah.
I have a car for sale which I'm not using, and it's staying for about a month. So I cannot sell. It's staying there. So I have to let it go. We don't need the second car again.
Okay. So are you going to sell it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be, cancelling stuff doesn't have to be, that's it, now we can't afford that. It doesn't have to be that mindset. No, not at all. No, cancelling things can be hugely liberating. I sold my television when it broke actually, and then I realised I never really watched it. And then I sold it, somebody wanted it, they wanted it for parts, I sold it for next to nothing. And nobody noticed. And so that was it. It was one less, and I realised actually I never even watched it anyway. So I didn't feel poor in any shape or form, and if anything, it was liberating. Negotiate, and always aim for win-win, absolutely win-win situations. And a win-win situation is using the art of leverage. If I'm going to buy something, I use my credit card. The reason I use my credit card because I don't incur bank transaction charges. So if I'm going to buy something, I'm going to buy this. I say, okay, I'm going to buy this. I have the money allocated to buy this. Instead of using my debit card or cash, which I very rarely use, I'm going to use my credit card. So saving on no bank transaction charge, so no tapping fee, no debit fee. I then use my credit card because it gives me up to 56 days extra free credit. So the longer you keep the money in your pocket, the more money you're making. Also, then my credit card is linked to, I have a credit card attached to loyalty schemes. So I'm going to buy this thing anyway. How I make the purchase is my business. So I use my credit card, so I'm going to buy it anyway. So my credit card is not extra money, but it is linked to a supermarket, so that every time I use my credit card, it gives me extra points on that particular supermarket. I think it gives me a discount on my one of my utility bills as well. So the purchase, let's say this was €10. So I haven't paid a bank transaction charge. I've kept my money in my pocket for as long as possible, because the longer I hold on to it, the more money I make out of it, even if it's small. Doesn't matter, it's not about the numbers. And I get extra discounts on other things. I'm going to buy groceries anyway. It gives me discounts on I think it's one of my utility bills I get a discount on. So the method is the same, And that was absolutely no extra effort, because it won't do it if it's extra effort. It won't do it if it's going to cost me money. I won't do it if it's complicated. And negotiating, it's always worth asking. Is there a way, or can I, would you be willing to? And the worst possible thing that can happen is the person says no. And if they say no, they say no. But it's quite amazing what you get when you ask. Allocate, allocate, allocate. When you're planning your money or using your plan or whatever word you want to use it, it's allocating your money on a simple principle of spend some, save some, give some away. But the bit you want to do first is you pay yourself first. And the minute you take control over your money, if you tell your money where you want it to go first, it doesn't run off and do its own thing. The more love and respect you show for your money, the more likely it is to hang around. So if you're flinging your money in the bottom of your bag, or you've sometimes coins in the middle of your driver's console, or sometimes people are a little bit cavalier with how they handle cash. It can be a metaphor for their relationship with money. And it can sometimes be like a slightly disrespectful relationship to money. But if you treat your money properly, carefully check in with it every day, even in your wallet, that the notes are smooth and not sort of rammed in and crumpled up, and your coins are neat and sorted and lodged or whatever, money will follow that money. And telling your money where you want it to go first at the beginning of the week, the day, the month, the year, it doesn't really matter. You tell it where you want it to go first, and then you're not wondering where it ran off to. And you're simply shifting your mindset to taking control and putting yourself in control. Get organized. I can't stress how important it is to get organized, and get organized, depending on where you are at the moment, can be a tedious task or a 2-minute task. But if you're unorganized and you need to query something or renegotiate something, and you phone up to query a bill, and they go, what's your account number? I think it's here somewhere in the fruit bowl, I think, or in the cupboard, can't find it, and then they won't talk to you and they won't engage with you, and then you go, I'll phone them back. And then another month passes, and you go, I really must do that thing, but you can't find that one vital piece of paper to do the thing that will save you all the money. And absolutely destroy your debt. And this is where Robert Kiyosaki and I disagree. So he believes in good debt and bad debt. I think all debt is bad, but destroy your debt, particularly debt that it's not necessarily about interest rates, but the debt that is causing you emotional distress. And there is a difference between a debt and a mortgage. So a mortgage is something you have made a conscious decision to make a purchase because you need to have somewhere to keep the rain off your head. But a debt, it is something that is causing you stress and anxiety. So it could be unsecured, it could be credit card, it could be anything. But if it is causing you stress, then aim to get rid of it. I can help you put strategies in place to do that don't cause any more emotional distress. And find your tribe. Who are you mixing with? What sort of language, if you go out with friends, what sort of language are they using? Are they, now I'm on a bit of a budget now, so I can't do this. I think I'll only have the bowl of steam and a glass of water with lemon, because you know how it is, you know how things are, it's all I can afford now. If those are the sort of people that you're hanging out with, I'm not saying don't hang out with your friends, but maybe pick a different activity, go for a walk in the park, and then nobody feels awkward about having to pay for something. So there's always a way of doing things, but finding your tribe is hugely important, and who you're mixing with, because we are the measure of the people that we spend most time with. But if you're with those negative Nellies, you can sort of politely engineer yourself away, and there's lots of ways of engineering the conversation around anyway. So I highly recommend this particular piece of software. It's called YNAB, as in you need a budget, and I personally don't really like that word budget, but it's an amazing piece of software. It's not free. It's one of the few things that I do recommend that isn't free, if that makes sense, but they do a very good trial, and they have very good videos on the website. And it's a piece of software that has, certainly I've been using it for about the last 5 years, has allowed me to make this mental shift of telling my money where I want it to go first. And it's incredibly fast and very, very easy to use. And if I can figure it out, then anybody can. It's called YNAB. Oh, sorry, it truncated that link a bit. So it's you need a budget. Yeah, it's YNAB as in, sorry, truncated. It's probably one of the few pieces of software that you do have to pay for that I recommend. But there's tons of other options. But again, the method doesn't matter. The action does. So whether you're making your plan on the back of an envelope, it doesn't matter if it's a super duper app or some color coded complicated spreadsheet that's linked to here, there, and wherever. It doesn't matter. It's about making a plan, spending in accordance with the plan, not what's in your bank balance, if that makes sense. So thinking big, people say, oh, look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves. Absolutely not. I say, well, I'm going to think really big, because this is the amount of money that I want to have, or this is this fairly substantial debt that was horrible, and that happened to me twice. I had these two very substantial debts, plural, hanging over me, and I thought, I have to get out of this, and I have to get out of this fast. I absolutely have to get out of this fast. At one stage, I was probably facing losing my home. So I really needed to think big. I couldn't be thinking about the pennies. So I needed to come up with strategies that would allow me to sleep at night. So I had this massive motivation to sort this out. I needed to keep the rain off my head. Start small, but start. If the task is too overwhelming, oh no, it's too hard. No, for goodness sake, no, for goodness sake. She said it was easy, she lied. If it's too much, it's unsustainable. It's a bit like saying, okay, that's it. We're all going to have beans on toast from now until the end of the year, and it's the 2nd of January. It's too much. It's unsustainable. When you make very small, incremental, sustainable changes, it's much easier for your brain psychologically to accept, and it doesn't feel so restrictive and so frugal. And it's much easier to scale. You can scale up and scale down. If you're working with percentages rather than fixed amounts of money, it allows you then to be a bit more fluid, rather than, gosh, I have to pay this much money each month, each week into this because that's what I'm supposed to do. It can be quite stressful. But if you say, well, I'm going to aim to pay myself 1%. So every time money comes into my life, I'm going to pay myself 1%. That's easy. And then you could scale that up. Instead of saying, right, every time money comes into my life, I'm going to pay myself a fixed amount of money. So I'm going to pay myself €50 every time money comes in, and you find a coin on the ground of 1 cent. It's too much. So make it scalable, make it easy. If it's not easy, I wouldn't be doing it. Track. Most people start by tracking their outgoing. So they immediately put their focus on, right, okay, that's it. We need to look at everything that's going out. When I actually say you're going to do the complete opposite, I'm not saying don't track your expenses, but I'm saying start with tracking what's coming in first, because it shifts your mindset immediately into a space of feeling more prosperous, and actually be quite amazed at how much comes in. So this is free from the website, or you can do it on the back of an envelope, doesn't really matter. So at the beginning of the month, I set myself a money goal, and I make it enormous, make it ridiculous. And sure, if I hate it, it'd be grand. But I track all the money that comes in. So that's money could be money I find at the ground, could be money I find at the bottom of my handbag, it could be a gift card, could be anything. All money is real. So I track it all. Then I also track, this is where it got really interesting, and it really shifted me out of the poor little me mindset. I track the value of free stuff. So I was in, where was I at the weekend? I was in Arnastic, and I bought some Rituals. They do really nice skincare products, and they're really nice. Again, with my credit card and my loyalty card and leverage living day outside of it. And then just at the till, she said, "Oh, here we have these lovely little travel sizes for you." So she gave me a couple of different, really nice, not sachets, but nice travel sizes with a lid, which are really handy. I said, "Thank you very much." So, okay, if I had to go and buy that, it probably would have cost me, how much? €5-10. So I thought, I'll be putting that in my value column. So I put in the value of that. And it made me realize that actually there's an awful lot more money coming into my life than I actually noticed. Somebody buys me lunch, somebody would go for coffee, or could be anything. But it was about shifting my mindset to actually, I'm not as badly off as I thought I was. And money attracts money because energy flows where focus goes. So by shifting your focus first to everything that's coming into your life and then looking at, right, what's going out instead of the other way around. Remember I said sales minus profit is your expenses. Just taking these equations and turning them upside down. So I do lots of this if you want to work with me. So I have a range of packages depending on how you want to work with me. If it's one-to-one, it's a little more expensive. If you come to one of my classes, this is sponsored by Pine Hub, and thanks very much to Bassi. So I have a get started. Again, a lot depends on where you're at. You might want to go straight into the delve deeper depending on what stage you're at. And I do a breakthrough program, which means you actually physically get time with me. And as long as you're Dublin based, you'll get physical, actual time with me, either in a city centre location or a location that's convenient. And I work with people for an absolute minimum of 4 to 5 months, because the tipping point is about 3 months. So if you I've worked with people for about 3 months and they're just starting to get traction. And then I found that, the 3 months their program was finished. And if they'd kept going for like 1 more month, they would have noticed a big difference. So that it does take a little while. There is a bit of groundwork to do. It doesn't happen miraculously. I wish it did. But it takes time. It takes time. I mean, I'll be 50 shortly. I can't fix a 50-year-old problem in 5 minutes. So it does take time. Anyway, we can talk, and if you want to work with me, we can talk. And I'm also finding now that there's huge power in a group. That one-to-one is fantastic, and I like doing one-to-one, but I'm finding that the groups are considerably more powerful because there is this group mind, this group energy, and even vibrationally, when there is huge power in a group mind. So we'll be launching in September the Wealthy Women Mastermind Group. I haven't quite worked out what that program will be offering yet, but there will be tons of free bonuses and tons of stuff that you can put on your value column. So I have a bonus. The bonus is I offer any potential new client a 30-minute complimentary clarity call, and that just book yourself in. My diary, my online diary is available. And the booking link is, you could just drop me a line there at askprue@prudencemoneypenny.com. You can just book yourself in to my online diary for a complimentary chat. Because while I would like to say I'll work with anybody, but sometimes it's a really good fit and sometimes it isn't. And I do work predominantly with women, but not to the exclusion of men. I do work, I seem to resonate better with women. So are there any questions? These are all free, so you can connect with me at any point via Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Yes.
I have one emergency question. I want the whole question. I meet a friend in Turkey. We're flying paragliding, and somehow he is in debt.
He's what?
He's in debt.
Okay.
They have debt.
Yeah.
About 55,000 euro.
Okay.
So he have everything over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So he took it one loan and pay off everybody the small loans. So now he have one big minus.
Okay.
So I tell him advice he should stop increasing his debt more than 55,000. So that is the first step, and then we thinking what to do for the next step. So do you have any suggestion for that?
Well, again, it comes down to kind of good debt and bad debt, and I used to work in loan of debt consolidation. So just to explain that difference, so good debt is where I buy something with my credit card. I have planned to spend. My credit card is not extra money. I couldn't even tell you what the credit limit is because I don't know. So it's not extra money. I just use it as a way of spending money that I have already planned to spend. It was in my plan. And actually, when I do buy this thing, this 10 euro thing, I will actually, not quite with a jam jar, but with a virtual jam jar, transfer that money into my credit card. So when the bill is paid, it's not an extra bill, it's just a way of spending money. So that is good debt. I've just leveraged it. And the reason I do it is because I keep the money for longer, because it causes me actual physical pain, to hand the money over, especially to the bank. I don't incur transaction charges. At the moment, there are no transaction charges on a credit card, and it gives me extra points, kind of like frequent flyer points. So that's a good debt. So the example of a bad debt would be if I was in trouble with my credit card and I was paying sort of 30% interest, and I didn't have the money to pay that, and it was causing me stress and anxiety every month. That's a bad debt, where it's following you around and can even impact your credit rating. And I had to shake off about 5 years of a blip on my credit rating that was following me around. And again, if you do have that difficulty, there are ways of dealing with that. So with that chap, so he consolidated all his loans into one.
Yeah.
Gosh, well, again, there's lots of things to look at. Can that loan be renegotiated? Could that interest rate be renegotiated? How does he have assets? Can he leverage that? It's a complex.
To pay that debt back will cost him about 10 to 15 years, and the payments will be back about 110,000.
Yeah, that's because of the interest rate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, it's the start. It doesn't matter where you start as long as you start. It's, first of all, it would need to know his numbers. So if he doesn't know his own numbers, that's where I would suggest he starts. So if you get him to shift his focus from, okay, what's coming in, just let go of the debt for the moment and just have a look at, get him to focus on everything that's coming in. And when you've done that, because it immediately puts you into prosperity mindset, then look at everything that's going out, and can he make small, sustainable adjustments? It's tweak your leaks. And in a lot of cases, your outgoings can be adjusted. It's not about, gosh, you remember Charlie Haughey now, we're all living, well, that's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But, it's not about feeling frugal and turning off the lights so that everybody, you fall down the stairs and break your hip, because that's kind of the environment that I was brought up in. We can't turn on the lights, but so nobody can see. We all fall downstairs. That it just doesn't make any sense. Again, it would just, I think, stop, take a breath, take an overarching view, and there is always a way. There is always a way. So it might be simple things like, instead of focusing on paying down the debt, is there a way that he can increase his income without much effort? Because if it costs money, or it takes you more time, or it's hard, I'm not doing it. So we can chat afterwards if you want. Now, if it kind of comes into sort of foreign stuff, or he's got offshore bank accounts, I might just have to sort of step away. But absolutely, anybody very welcome to book yourself into my online schedule, and we can have a chat. Sometimes it's a good fit, sometimes it isn't, and that's perfectly fine. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
I had spoken to you before, a very short conversation.
Yes.
But one of the things I picked up from you, which you say tonight, is about pay yourself first.
Yes.
I was never in that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to pay myself first, and I decided on a percentage, as you were saying, as opposed to an amount. But what I did was I put it into a savings account, which I can see when I go into my app in my bank, and it's there, and I can see it. But like what was happening, I got a raise in work, so I was like, grand. So I'm very comfortably able to put that in now. Then the car decided to clap out on itself, and all these other little expenses started to come in. So then this 10% that I was paying myself is just going back out again. So would you suggest moving it so I can see it?
There's a couple of things.
An account, say,
in the outer Hebrides or something. Yeah, there's a couple of things you can do, and again, so I'm not going to get into the whole the technicalities of the allocation, but the minute you buy something, particularly an electronic thing, at some point it's going to break. They just do. At some point it will happen. So the minute you make a purchase, you need, and you've had that money, you've saved and whatever, you've done whatever to make that purchase. When you make that purchase, you need to be planning, so it's future proofing. At some point the car is going to need servicing. since for over 2,000 years, Christmas has been happening in December. And yet we go, oh my goodness, where did that come from? Oh, good. When? So, things, it's about future proofing. And maybe you might need to look at your planning, maybe it was off. It's also hugely important that when you log into your online bank that you see those numbers going up. Because that then it's very important that you see positive bank balances. So you could continue, I would strongly suggest you continue with the pay yourself first, but maybe you add a percentage of that to, I used to call it my emergency fund, but I found that I kept attracting emergencies. So now I call it the I've got this covered fund. And again, so when something happens, because stuff does, with the bet, even with the, and I'm a planner, oh, am I a planner? Even with all my planning, there'll always be something. But I don't feel that it used to go like the disaster fund, and then a disaster would happen. It's like it was almost like a kind of a told you so. So when I changed the name of that fund to the I've got this, and it didn't feel so like for crying out loud. So continue the methodology, and there's lots of ways of putting money away that makes it harder to get at. And I'm a firm believer, actually, by the way, in post offices and credit unions, but if it's a long-term plan, that might not be the best home for your money to grow to its best ability. So there are other ways of putting your money away that it grows faster and still makes it tricky for you to get at. Okay. So, but yes, absolutely. And I did file it away in my elephant brain that you had spoken to me, because that's what I do. I file things away in my elephant brain. And I'm really glad you implemented that.
Yeah, but then just it was sad because every time I put money away, it's like,
you see, because the universe is listening, because it knows.
Yeah.
So that's a mindset.
Yeah.
It might be a case of needing to go a little deeper.
But I see it as I think it's what you just said there. I have it as my emergency fund as opposed to I've got this COVID fund.
Yeah, that's what I mean about when I made that, I changed. I said, this is ridiculous. I'm attracting emergencies and disasters. So I simply changed it to I think it's I've got it covered. And then it felt so much more effortless. I love effortless. I hate effort. I hate exercise. So I hate, if I have to, if it's effort, I'm not doing it. And I do believe in leverage. So I leverage the living daylights actually. So I'm in the car, if I don't drive very often, if I am in the car, I'll listen to an audiobook or something. So when I do have to be in my car, I might as well listen to something uplifting rather than the radio that's just going to put me in a bad mood. Or if I'm at home, sometimes I wish I could put sweeping brushes on my feet or something, so when I'm walking around I could be cleaning at the same time. So I really do like effortless. I'm cooking, I cook in a slow cooker because that's fling and forget, and even I couldn't mess it up. Because that's absolute minimum effort. Absolutely minimum effort. I don't even stir it. And nobody's dead. If it's not easy or effortless, I'm not doing it. Any other questions? Did you have a question?
Yeah. Following this other question, there were two things. I just share one idea that's worked really well for me. Because I just have two young adults, right? And when they're in their early teens, I just sort of crack this joke at one stage. Is it a want or a need? If it's a need, we pay for it. If it's a want, you pay for it yourself. So kids do have money these days.
Of course they do. Yeah.
So that actually, and this is sort of maybe guts of 7, 8 years, 9 years. And it actually worked a treat. And so just for anybody with teenage, young kid or teenage kids, it worked a treat. And as a result, my son is coming out and he would be, he's quite frugal, he's very good with money, and he's going down the economic and financial track. And my daughter, is really good with money, even though money's for spending. She's a different attitude. But that thing of do I need it? If I need it, the parents will pay for it. If I want to, I pay for it myself. That's just share that.
It's the needs and wants, and sometimes I have that conversation with myself, and I go, "That's my mother.
Yeah,
That's my mother. She's in my head." And she goes, "Now, dear." And if I was in trouble, so if I was really in trouble, it would be my darling dearest Aoife. I knew, oh God, I'm really in for it now. I was really in trouble. And so my mom was incredibly frugal. Yes, she was prudent, but she was unbelievably frugal. And I think that was just, she was married, I think she was born in 1924, I think, when she was born. So probably, brought up during wartime when things were very scarce, ration books. And her story around wealth was, she was brought up very wealthy. Her father was a self-made millionaire back when millionaires, were actually kind of a thing. A property developer before property developers. So up until that point, you would buy a piece of land, hire one builder to build, and a builder would build one house. He was a builder, and he thought, well, why don't I just build 10 houses? It's the same effort, probably where I get my laziness from. Like, it's the same effort to build 10 houses as to build one, and I could sell them for more. So that was before property developing was on trend. So he was very successful, and he died very young. I think he had a heart attack. And when he died, he didn't have a pension because pensions didn't exist for self-employed people, and everything was cash. That's just, it was 1950, whatever. Everything, maybe even earlier, things were cash just because there was no electronic fund. Payroll was one boy on a bicycle with envelopes. So when he died, all the money stopped because he didn't have policies and things in place that would exist now. And so my mom remembered furniture and things being carried out of the house in front of her. And so she remembered going from being quite wealthy and quite privileged to, practically what she had was what she was standing up in. And so her mindset, she had this huge fear around money, hugely, hugely fearful. And so I do agree that with the needs and wants, the words are going with this long-winded story, but sometimes I really do want the thing. And yes, I need it, but you know what? I want it. And so I allocate a portion of my money for fun and the fun stuff. And in that fund is for fun. And so it allows me to spend absolutely guilt-free because I know that everything else has been taken care of. It's about the order in which I pay for things. So I'm a bit of a pen snob. I like pens. And I love Swarovski pens. I mean, a pen is a pen. It's going to do the same thing, but I just think there's something fabulous about writing with a lovely pen. And so it is the more expensive pen, but when I write with that pen, I didn't bring it with me in case somebody pinched it, I just feel amazing. So was it a need? Well, I needed a pen. Was it a want? Absolutely. But I had the money allocated, so it was completely guilt-free. And then probably got points. I think I did use my loyalty card, use my credit card, so I leveraged the living daylights out of the purchase. Sorry, was there another question?
Sorry, could I just ask the second part, if you don't mind? Just following on your question there earlier about let's just say you were giving yourself the 10%, whatever that percentage is. Have you a recommendation to where to put that? In other words, like in terms of whether the interest rates are very low at the moment.
Yes.
And there are some of these like 21-day notice accounts, all this type of thing, which is a good idea. You can't get your hands on.
Yeah.
But if any, one or two particular recommendations for what would you call them? Consistent payments,
regular payments. While I am a qualified financial advisor, I currently don't offer advice, but I will give you education.
Yeah.
And in my book, which is available to purchase this evening for €12.50 in Financial Freedom Explained, I do make a recommendation about a particular method which is new to the Irish market. It's called peer-to-peer lending. It is unregulated, but I'm not going to give any advice in any shape or form. What I do suggest is, at any point, it's always useful to sit down with in any of the banks, the mainstream banks have a financial planner.
Yeah.
And their job is to chat to you, and it's completely free. And I recommend that you have at least 2 appointments with maybe the same person, but also have another appointment with somebody else, because sometimes a different person will explain the same thing in a different way. So I'm not recommending one product over the other. And sometimes I didn't really like him. I thought he was much nicer for no reason. So have at least 2 complimentary appointments with somebody. Just ask, see what they say. Now their job is to sell you something, and then go to a different bank or a different service provider, have a similar conversation. And then, because it just gives you quite a good understanding of the other sort of products and services that are in the market. And those appointments are absolutely free. And if you do, we can talk about it afterwards, because every situation is different and everybody's circumstances are different. There's a whole big pile of legal and regulatory questions that need to be asked. But those appointments with any of those advisors are totally complimentary. But 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. What I can help you doing as part of the coaching is to prepare you for that meeting so that you are in a position to ask better questions. And if you don't understand something, it doesn't mean that, it just means the other person didn't explain it properly. So I would always suggest with any financial planner, have a minimum of 2 appointments, because the first one you're sort of rabbit in the headlights unless you really do know what you're talking about. And then your second appointment is also, can we talk about this one in a bit more detail? And then maybe the third one, you may or may not make a decision. But there's tons and tons of options out there, and yes, deposit interest rates are particularly low. But the longer you hang on to your money, if you hang on to your money for as long as you possibly can, the more money you make out of it, which is why I leverage the living daylights out of my credit card. So I'm the sort of person that the banks hate. Any other questions?
And just when it comes to like credit cards, I just have a fear around, I suppose, credit cards, because in the past I haven't used them on myself in severe debt. So I kind of looked at the likes of the Revolut cards.
Oh yeah, it's a prepaid.
Yeah.
So I'm
like
trialing Revolut at the moment actually.
I ordered one, and like that, I pay myself first to use that account. That's kind of like my account for me.
Yeah.
And I have my 3 little jars at home as well. And obviously one is I call it my play account.
Yeah.
So that's like for my treats, my nails.
Or like me and the pens.
My hair, things like that. Things that I like that guilt free. I don't feel guilty.
It's great, isn't it?
Even though I have debt, but this has been allocated to me.
I think Revolut have an affiliate scheme as well.
They do,
I think they do. So an affiliate scheme is another way of, well, look, I was just talking to Mary down the road, and she was going to buy the thing anyway. That link for the budgeting software is an affiliate link. So I actually don't make any money out of it, but it gives me 1 month free. Or if I recommend a book to somebody, the link that I send them, the cost to them is exactly the same. I make about 2 or 3 cents from that purchase. So if something was going to happen anyway, it's no extra effort. If you are using a product or service, it's always worth asking. I really love this thing, pen, computer, co-working space, whatever. And Bassi was kind enough to sponsor this evening. So that's a win-win. And it's always worth asking, is there an affiliate scheme? Is there a win-win? Is there a way that we can both benefit from this? So I am trialing Revolution, but I haven't quite got the hang of it yet.
Yeah, well, that's why I just started myself as well, just to see how it goes. I'm
trialing another online bank at the moment as well, N26.
Okay.
It's a German online bank. Again, just it's transaction free.
Yeah. It's the charges, because I think the last round of charges of my account was like €40.
In a year, if you stop, it's not that you're stopping, but if you don't pay, and there's tons of ways of not necessarily avoiding, but substantially reducing your bank charges, that's about an extra €125 with your name on it. And like if it has my name on it and it's free, I'm first in the queue. But I never recommend something unless I can fully stand over it, and I personally have tried it myself and I know how it's why I'm trialing Revolut. I'm still getting the hang of it. Any other questions? Was it riveting? Were you riveted?
What about holidays? What would you advise?
Oh, I think you should take them. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, yeah.
Absolutely. Take lots of them.
Whether to plan on like 1 year ahead, or just do this accidentally, or
it depends. Some people say you actually, I very rarely talk to somebody about the cost of a holiday, because somebody beside you on the flight will always have got the ticket cheaper, and so it just kind of annoys me. So I'm going away shortly, and again, I was just talking to a friend of mine, said we're going here. I said, oh right, so am I. And the words were out of my mouth before I could sellotape my mouth closed. And she said, I said, oh right, okay, would you mind if asking what did that cost you? She said, oh, well, we got this and this and this super deal, all inclusive for this amount of money. I thought, why did I even ask? Why did I ask? Because she paid less than I did for more. I thought, why did I even annoy myself in asking that question? So some people say, plan a couple of years ahead and fund. Other people say, if you wait till the last minute, if you hold your nerve, book at the last minute. I don't know. With holidays, I do my research, but I'm not going to torture myself for hours because I have other things to do with my time. Maybe a couple of phone calls. Generally, I'll use a travel counselor. It's a travel agency, but they're self-employed individuals and they're working. It's really nice to work with one person. They're all over the country. They're all over the world, actually. It's a slightly different way of booking a holiday. They often can get different deals, and it's really nice to work with one person. I use Airbnb a lot, and Airbnb have an affiliate scheme. So if I introduce somebody to Airbnb either as a host, as a guest, or an Airbnb experience, we both get credit. So I've traveled numerous times using Airbnb and paid nothing. That's win-win. Again, that's the power of leverage. So, I think sometimes it depends. If it was something really big, I went to New Zealand a couple of years ago. It was the year of the Chilean volcano, whatever year that was. And I had planned that about 2 years ahead because I knew, even logistically, because if I'd gone any further, I would have been on my way back. So logistically, it was quite a long trip, and financially, it was a substantial outlay. So I did plan quite a bit in advance for that. And again, I used a travel counselor actually to book that because it was a complicated trip. It was probably an insane trip, but anyway, it's another story. That's the whole book in that trip. Used a travel counselor, and I used my credit card so that I made substantial payments on my credit card that then gave me tons of, actually a year's worth of free groceries. And then I was keeping the money in my bank account for as long as possible. But just sometimes some people don't like credit cards and say, well, you can use a prepaid one if you are concerned about that discipline, or you don't, you have that. It's your mindset, because I didn't use them for a long time.
The interest rate with me that, so like, I think the way to work with credit cards is obviously being able to pay balance in full.
Well, I don't know what my credit limit is.
Yeah.
I'd have to go look it up,
So
and I don't know what the interest rate is because I've never paid it. So I haven't a clue. The interest rate could be anything. I don't care because I've never paid it.
So how are you managing it? Like, say
because it's paid in full every month. So it's cleared.
You made a big purchase, like
yeah, but if it was a big purchase, I would have. So the credit card is a way. Yeah, it's a way of spending money I already have, and I have planned to spend it. Now, whether I pay cash, I use my debit card or credit card, it doesn't matter because the money is there anyway. So I've planned. It's a way of spending money I have planned to spend already.
You just don't use it for credit, basically.
No, but I do. I suppose I'm using it to spend my own money. I'm just using somebody else's money. So I am leveraging. And the minute I do make, especially a big purchase, the minute I do make that purchase, I will actually transfer the money virtually because I'm not handing it over to the bank until the last minute. So I will just do a virtual transfer. So I'm just like taking a biro and putting a circle around money in the bank account. So I make my spending decisions not on my bank balance. Because let's say there's €2,000 in the bank balance. 500 of that is for the mortgage. 500 of that is for my JAG excess. 500 of that is for my credit card, and the rest is so. And I look at the bank and I go, €2,000, hooray! I'll book a holiday. So I make my spending decisions based on my spending plan.
Yeah.
So I ignore the bank balance. Go, right, what does the plan say? The plan says you have €100 in your grocery fund. Fantastic, I'll go shopping. So in a sense, I'm just kind of, not that I'm ignoring the bank balance because I check it, but I don't make my spending decisions based on what's in the bank balance or in my wallet, because that money might be allocated for other things.
And would you do, like, within the bank accounts, like literally have different accounts, and this is my food account, this is my mortgage
Not
account.
quite. I do have multiple bank accounts. At one stage I had over 20, but I know, but see, I never paid bank charges, so I could have 120. Now it was becoming a bit ridiculous, so I did a bit of it. No, I'm including it sounds like I'm including kind of long-term plans, credit cards, investment funds and things in that count. So it was a bit bananas. There is a method in how I do things. It doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. And if that method doesn't work for you, we'll find a method that works, because it's not my way or the highway. I used to leave it. I let go of that. But I never pay charges. I haven't paid charges in a long time. I might pay commission, which I don't have any control over. But I think with Revolut, I don't pay commission. Because I sometimes make a sterling transaction, or if I pay something in dollars, it kind of annoys me and I pay a commission. But I don't think I have to with Revolut. I haven't quite got the hang of that yet. And that'd be the only time I'd pay a charge. But I manage everything because it's 30 seconds, maybe a minute every day. So it's not as unmanageable as it sounds.
Sorry, two quick ones. One is a comment, one's a question. So going back to Natalia's question, I think from experience, typically you'd save you book your holiday in advance, more often than not, because over time airfare goes up, doesn't go down. Hotel, you may get a good deal close to time last minute, but it's very likely you get last minute deals on airfare. So typically, if you book in advance, the further along you book, the cheaper it is. Also, if you fly midweek, it's cheaper. So versus flying over the weekend, those tend to be cheaper.
Yeah, we can definitely.
Well, we have different situation before. She's unpredictable on holiday. She can go anytime where she wanted. But the problem was I was strict on the days where we can go. Now I'm free and we can choose any day to go and any price to fly or planning. So it doesn't matter now the time in advance. Only those people who have a job, they need to plan in advance.
Yeah, sometimes you let's say you're a teacher, or so your holidays are this time, and teachers, if you have children in school, it's harder because in school holidays the prices go up. But there's still lots of ways of the year after we came back from New Zealand. We had a few headaches on the trip, and we probably one of the first time I ever exceeded my spending plan, but we had a few one or two minor unforeseen things like that Chilean volcano, and not being able to get from point A to point B. But anyway, that's another story. And the following year I thought, the coffers are a bit empty this year, but I still really wanted to go away. So we went woofing. Again, not for everybody. So woofing is the worldwide organization of organic farmers. It was probably maybe not one of my better ideas, but anyway. So we went to West Cork for 2 weeks and volunteered on a goat farm. Again, maybe not quite everybody's cup of tea. I have had better ideas. And it just bucketed rain, bucketed rain for the 2 weeks that we were there. But actually we had such a laugh. Really, really enjoyed it. And woofing or volunteering or any of those kind of bonkers things, you get accommodation and board in return for your labor and skills. So some skills, if you're particularly good at something, you would be highly sought after, and we didn't know one end of a goat from the other. But the people were really nice, and it was raining. So 2 weeks on a goat farm in West Cork, and we took the train down. I don't really like driving. The train, the bus, something. We're so far, down the peninsula. If we'd gone any further, we would have been in the sea. But that trip, I really, really wanted to take a trip. But the spending plan wasn't really in the plan, but we still went on holidays. And, I've had people stay with me, sort of almost random strangers, couch surfing, and I've connected with people that I connected with some people I met them online through a mastermind program in Canada. I went and stayed with them, so it cost me my flight and, a bottle of wine. And so there are still ways of taking trips. There's still ways of doing things that are kind of win-win, because we really wanted to meet. We'd never physically met. It was really nice to meet people in a mastermind group, and I got to meet them, and I got to go to Canada, and they'll probably come to Ireland at some point. So there's always a way to do things. Sometimes it just ask yourself a better question. And in fact, in my other book, the We Sew It Together book, I talk about the difference between affirmations and afformations. So an affirmation is, how can I do this? How come I'm so lucky? How? There's always because your brain then goes into Google mode, and it will do everything in its power to find the answer to the question you've asked. Because if you're asking why am I always so flipping goofy? Why am I always late? You will always be late. But if you're asking yourself better questions, you're putting your brain into a more inquiring mind.
So the question I had though was, I like the principle you mentioned about leveraging credit card, right? But from experience, it takes a lot of discipline to go between what you plan to spend
Yes.
and what you actually spend, right?
Have you met me? I am the queen of control.
So how do you get that discipline to make sure that you stick to what you plan to spend and you never go past?
Let's not say I am human. I probably am quite disciplined, and disciplined because I've been left so vulnerable twice. And the first time I didn't know we were in debt, and it was only through, because the relationship was breaking down, it was only through mediation that we had to produce statements, and I had to produce this statement of income and expenditure, and I had no idea what I needed to do, and it was suddenly, oh, and by the way, we have this bill and this, and I was like, oh, crikey, why didn't you tell me? And my then husband he said, well, I didn't know how, so neither of us knew how to talk about money. And it sounds ridiculous, like, how do you not know? Because neither of us were brought up in environments where our parents spoke about money. I never ever remember my parents having a conversation about, did you pay the whatever. They probably did, they just never in front of us. And sentences were always prefixed with my mom saying, thanks to your father's hard work now, or if your father worked harder, we could. And so I had this sort of slightly warped is the wrong word, but confused idea around money. And then because I hadn't identified those patterns in myself, I made the same mistake again, but this time around it was even bigger. I had 2 mortgages and no job, and that's another story. And that took quite a lot of it. Took about 5 years to shake off, and I had a blip on my credit rating then, which is now gone. But it taught me an awful lot. It taught me about myself in this way, who I am, quite disciplined, and it also taught me about how you deal with, if you have a poor credit rating, you sometimes can be quite vulnerable, and then people go, so you're refused a reasonable interest rate, so you're forced to using maybe an unscrupulous moneylender. But it made me realize that actually, no, you don't. There are still tons of options. You can still do the things you want to do. You can address your credit rating, and there are loads of ways to bring it up perfectly legitimately and legally, and that you don't even have to pay for. You should never ever have to pay anybody else to help you repair your credit rating. You just need to know how, and it's free. But I charge.
Another question: what's your stance on? Okay, I think you mentioned a bit about be frugal in spending and have some kind of plan. That's one side of it, right? There's a bit about paying yourself on the saving side and investing that to get additional income, which is good. What's your stance on giving?
I am a firm believer in giving.
Yeah.
But it needs to be from the right place.
Okay.
My parents were brought up that if you didn't give, you weren't going to go to heaven. And this is not a slur on the church, so I'm kind of quite careful about how in case I offend anybody, but that's what they were brought up. That it was almost that the more you give, it was like you were buying your that's my ticket. That's fine, I've got my seat now at the table. So I am a firm believer in giving, but giving doesn't have to be money, because some Irish charities maybe are not, people have mixed views about Irish charities, and there'd be 1 or 2 clouds over a few well-known Irish charities. So giving can be, you can give your time. Like, I drive an ambulance very slowly. I do it for fun, but I also give my time as a volunteer first aid trainer, as a volunteer, I do emergency first response. So I do that as a volunteer. Like, yellow is not my color. But I do it for fun, actually, because I get to go, and I get to go to the New Year's Eve concert, and I get to do cool stuff. And I get a lot of free food, which is good too. I will volunteer for food. So giving, you can give your time. I cleared out some of my bookshelves this evening and brought some books up to Bassi for his library. So everybody can benefit from those. You can clear your cupboard. You can bring some food down to a food bank. You can help an old lady across the road whether she wants to go or not. Giving doesn't have to be monetary, but I do believe in giving, but not as long as your motivation is not like I'm buying my seat at the table. Your motivation is because it's a nice thing to do and knowing it's going to come back to you tenfold. So you kind of give unconditionally, I think is quite important.
The thing of giving is have free coffee out to see the next person. You only get on your
Oh, yeah,
your free
yeah.
coffee. There's nothing better than just sitting there and watching someone who's in and say, that's already paid for.
Yeah, it's really nice, right? The toll bridge.
Yeah.
No, you can't do it quite so much because of tags, but
Yeah.
you pay for the car behind you.
Yeah.
Or something, or you just do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you just.
Or me baking. I just love baking and giving people breads and things like that.
Yeah. It doesn't, it can just be because it's a nice thing to
You're a
do.
good friend.
And then you see when the person puts on tons of weight, you go, well, actually, I'm a personal trainer.
That's why they love me when we go hiking, because I have all the trees and everything. I bring out
Uh-huh.
like, oh, Jen, don't come on this hike.
Yeah, so, you know, giving should never come from a place of pain, because you can't help the poor by being one of the poor. You just can't. It doesn't make any logical sense. And if you have mixed views about, everybody has their own charity as well. So maybe, you know, Save the Donkey is your thing and I prefer horses, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's when, you know, I think sometimes I'm not mad about when you're feeling coerced. If I'm being followed down Grafton Street with somebody shaking a bucket or a tugger, actually makes me quite annoyed. And I don't like to support charities that use those chuggers. And actually will go out of my way not to support those charities. But there's tons and tons of other ways of giving that sit right with me, and everybody's different.
Okay. Quick on our notes.
Absolutely.
Little thank you.
Oh goodness, that's going in my value.
No, thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you for
I'm delighted to
coming.
be here. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. This I came across this space by mistake. I was going a bit mad at home. I was looking for a co-working space, and I came up here. And Bassie is one of the few John Maxwell trained coaches in Ireland as well. So there's only about 10 of them, 10 in the country, less than 10. So it was great. It was an absolute privilege to meet you. And I think our paths, when our paths crossed over with a phone call out of the blue, that your name came up. So I don't believe in accidents. I think, you know, it's a divine timing and serendipity, and sometimes these invisible threads are going on in the background that we don't always know. It's something you do feel like you're hitting your head against a wall, and then just something. But when you shift your focus, get out of the woe is me, and you go, whoa, me, amazing things start happening. And those opportunities are always there. That was loud enough. Those opportunities are always there. You just never noticed.
That's a good thing. Lucky ladies and
Yeah.
book and everything, you know, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
An opportunity opens up for you.
Yeah, it's like you know that the book has opened up amazing opportunities for the three of us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The book that I happen to bring copies along.
And me. So then in case you run out.
In case I run out. Absolutely. Yeah, you could have three of us on it this evening.
Yeah.
And writing those books opened up huge opportunities for me. You know, anybody can write. It's just, you know, how do you get from your head
It was the
out
belief
there.
more so.
It was
right?
the belief,
in,
yeah.
and for me personally, it was my belief in myself
Mm.
and what I know I'm worthy of doing, and
Yeah.
valuing myself more, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gives you, it really shoves you out of your comfort zone.
Oh, yes.
Like, oh, crikey. Yeah,
Definitely.
it really, really does. But, you know, it's again, it's leverage, and you leverage the living daylights out of the book. Absolutely. You heard it here first. Yep. Bassie, thank you so much.
No,
Can we get some, I need some photographs if that's okay with you.
Yes, let me just.
I might go back. Oh,